gator in the house?
Not the gator! Give me that shovel! Come here!
Oh, get him, Mom! Get that gator!
When I talk about the movies that Pixar creates, I jump at the chance to explain that they don't just make films for kids. They make animated movies for adults, and most importantly for themselves. That's why what they create works on such a deeply immersive level. Pixar makes movies for everyone, making sure that the parents are just as deeply engaged as the kids. And they do this through references to cult classic films, subtle and not so subtle adult jokes,
You uncultured swine!
and complex storylines that don't pull punches, but definitely pull on the heartstrings. However, one of the greatest and most subtle things that I love about Pixar is the way that they use cinematic film techniques in the ways that we see them in conventional filmmaking. And it's the type of thing that you didn't get to see in the traditional 2D animated Disney films. In those pictures, they'd often have static watercolor background and characters walking and interacting horizontally within them, usually at a 45-degree angle half facing the camera. You didn't see a lot of variety in the scenes or the camera movement, except for the musical numbers, of course. Don't get me wrong, I know these are stills, animated by hand, and they do an amazing job of it. I mean, I know I can't draw. It's a beautifully painted background. Yet the artists are limited by how they can use that background differently and what they can get to move within that background. Because adding another background means painting another picture, and that means more time and therefore costs more money. Whereas in a 3D animated world, you can model an entire room and have all sorts of interesting camera angles and movements within that space. When Disney started to push these boundaries in their hand-drawn animated films, it was to impress us. And in Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, I mean, we were amazed. We were meant to be. Disney was showing off. Cue Pixar Studios.
Its technology and success have revolutionized the business of animation and opened the door to endless possibility between Hollywood and the Silicon Valley.
Pixar brought in that dynamic movement within their frames that mimic the movement of a cinema camera, because they're now operating in a three-dimensional space. But they don't show off. It's subtle and what we're used to seeing in real-life films. Because of this, we don't necessarily notice how dynamic the animation is compared to a 2D film. We're so comfortable with the use of these conventional movements and framing for revealing ideas and developing story in traditional filmmaking, we just go along with it. This camera movement animation, as well as the quirky conversation, immerses us into the world more than any other animation that came before it. For example, let's have a look here on the scare floor.
Right. There. See? The door. You left it wide open. And leaving the door open is the worst mistake any employee can make because...
It could let in a draft.
It could let in a child!
In Monsters, Inc., we are taught how the wardrobe doors work from their world, connecting to ours. Now, we already have an inkling of the importance of the doors, which was shown to us in the charming as anything opening credits. But this is then explained in greater detail through the process of the workday for our boys. The explanation is not by someone tediously explaining the job they do, but by seeing it come together. Good old show don't tell. We start with the close focus on Mike as he is going into the scare floor, who by this point we already love.
Oh, Mike.
I was on TV!
And we see what in filmmaking would be a crane shot, because they can, even though they aren't using a crane. Now, Disney did this with Beauty and the Beast, and everyone was amazed. Oh my God, look at the crane shot! I've never seen anything so amazing. Did they use computers? Oh my gosh. No one had seen this in animation before. But the shift in animation style sticks out like katsu prawns on ice cream. That's an actual thing in Japan. The only way they were able to do this shot is because the background suddenly became 3D. To animate this in hand-drawn 2D would have been extraordinary and potentially an impossible effort. Yet here, in this Pixar animation, it seems so natural, we don't even question it. Because it's mimicking the style of live action films, which is so different to the stationary background we get in traditional animation. We're invited into this world in a way that suspends our disbelief. This crane shot shows us how large this power industry is, and how our boys are just a regular pair of working men. Then we cut to a still shot as the canister rolls into view, keeping it dynamic but also showing us what's happening. Mike isn't talking us through his job. Okay, time to pick up the scare canister. I sure hope we fill it with screams. No, it's just on there, maximum scream capacity. We know what this canister is for. Sure, maybe kids can't read it that fast, but they'll understand later when it's filled. The scene is punchy, tracking Mike, regularly rotating the camera or zooming in and out gradually to build on the idea that this is a busy and physically active work environment. And these quick cuts tell us so much of how the day works. A canister, prepped and locked. A file is collected with a child profile, including a picture and a card. And the card is swiped with a gentle glide cam-esque twisting pullout, which would have been an absolute nightmare to animate by hand. But in a 3D environment, anything is possible. Because they can. These quick movements tell us that this is a quick and regular process. And the regular zooming in and out, it isn't needed, but they do it anyway to make sure that we're engaged and moving with the monsters while they work. This is Mike's job. It's regular, it's methodical, and he's the best at it. I mean, he's done first, even though Rose held him up. Using a neat rule of threes, we get to see how the plant works. 1, 2, 3. Monsters get cards. 1, 2, 3 swipes. But this is my favorite shot in the scene. This focus pull that reinforces that the cards bring the doors to the scare floor. The zoom from the console to the portal where the doors are coming through. Oh, that shift in focus. And it's 1, 2, 3 doors. Pixar, you aren't even using a camera. You don't need to do that. But it is beautiful. We see stuff like this in everyday filmmaking, so we're immersed immediately into the scene. It's dynamic storytelling. They use panning shots, perspective shots, and neat tracking that shows this power plant going into operation, the same way you would do in any live action film. Then they link it back to our world. Nighttime is coming, and here's our chance to show off lighting. They don't need lighting rigs. They don't need to play with lighting. It's not a film set, but they're animating it anyway. Darkening the room, spotlights on our workers, and the deep respect they show for our scarers as they stand to attention. Their workspace perfectly ready. It's just this depth added to the scene, this darkening of the lighting of the room on this side, preparing for the nighttime that's on the other side of the doors. It creates this immediate tension in the scene. And in comes the slow-mo entrance of the scarers entering, which by itself is all seriousness. It clearly references all those slow motion entrances of those heroes that we think are so awesome. And specifically, a tip of the hat to every awesome group that's ever had a slow motion entrance like this. Armageddon, Clockwork Orange, Kill Bill, and it's only added to with the grandiose score that's happening in the background. So patriotic. The monsters continue onto their assigned workstation. There's something extra special in the sheer imagination, the variety and textures of the different monsters and their skill sets. Scales, slimy, and the individual hairs that flow as Sully moves. The attention to detail doesn't just make us look at it and marvel how each of Sully's hairs move individually, but heck yeah, that's cool. It also makes us trust this world is real. They play with as many different ideas and looks as they can. They still give these creatures lovely human-style facial expressions, but they do so with hundreds of eyes. One eye, slime, scale, hair, big teeth, sharp teeth, no teeth. They are limited to absolutely nothing, and they play with what can be both terrifying and, spoilers, eventually funny. This world includes such vastly different monsters, and they explore those limits. The storytelling is so neat, no one has said that each of these monsters have a separate set of skills. And we find out later that they pair monsters based on their skill set to what would scare a particular child. And we see through this pan as they prepare that each of these monsters can scare in their own way. And they even squeeze in a cute Toy Story reference with the wallpaper behind Randall. This imagination, this limitless creativity is not just seen here on the scare floor, but when we follow Mike and Sully to work as well. We see this world of monsters of different size, stature, and ability. What should be scary to kids is normalized and even made fun. And now we're back to that neat story progression. that conflict between characters. The reveal that Sully is on top of the list is done by a neat pan upwards. It shows not only an increase in number, but to add to this, they actually increase the visual size of the numbers. 4 monsters tallied in the bottom screen, compared to Sully and Randall in the top screen by themselves. This emphasizes their success and the competition. Every aspect is considered. Nothing's just slapped on a screen. No movie is complete without a great score. And when you look at the work that they did with Randy Newman on this scene, the use of brassy jazz just makes me think immediately of factory work. And it goes perfectly in this scene. The soundtrack of deep piano and horns with the high brass and those jazzy, lightly tapped drums is great because it's eliciting an emotional response from music that is culturally synonymous with factory work. This is again for the adults because this is a callback from cartoons from our childhood, as far back as Looney Tunes. The deeply seated idea is that this kind of music goes hand in hand with the concept of repetitive factory work or day-to-day tasks. This is so deeply ingrained in us that we accept this idea so well from the music. Music that they use alongside the characters, doing several tasks to get their jobs done with ease. This is clearly a day-to-day routine on a factory floor. Well played, Pixar. Well played. I could go on and continue to talk in detail about the film that helped parents talk to their kids and tell them not to worry about the monster that they think is hiding under the bed. But for now, let's just appreciate that attention to detail, that freedom that Pixar explores in their creativity. Let's appreciate the facial expressions in CGI animation, the dynamic movement of camera. Let's appreciate the deep level of thought put into the score and how all of these elements put together really bring us into this world. The films Pixar create are made to look as though they are shot on camera, to look like a real film, because they are a real film. We go beyond thinking, this is really cool animation, and just get drawn into the world. The traditional use of camera movement and cinema convention really makes us comfortable and engages us as an audience. And as you look closely at what they create, you realize that they go that extra mile with their animation. You step back and look at Pixar and think, they don't need to do this, but it works. I've been Spudjester, thank you for watching. Hopefully I'll create some more stuff soon. I don't know what else to do, I haven't figured out a sign off yet. Peace.